this is Gerbert. You're listening to the Boys Bible Study Podcast. Welcome to the Gerbert Video Curriculum Series. Oh, I am so excited to see you. We're going to have so much fun, you and me. That's for sure. Well, I guess the show's getting ready to start. Well, I'll see you in a little bit and we can visit some more. Watch close. I just gotta say I want to spend my day with you. You are my best friend. I want to share the things you do. Baby, you make me smile. Bebop-a-dee-da-da-ooh-ooh, wow. I just want to spend my day with you. I just want to spend my day with you.
Welcome back to Boys Bible Study. Really special episode today. So I'd say let's get right into it. But first of all, as always, I'm Ash. I'm here with my co-hosts,
Scott
and Julian.
We have two very special guests to present our material today. We are finally digging into the oeuvre of Gerbert, a Christian kids entertainment favorite. Like I said, with us are two guests. The first, currently recording from figuratively from backstage from the National Everything is Terrible tour. We have EIT co-creator Dimitri Simakis with us today. Hey, Dimitri, welcome back to the show.
Great to be back.
So nice to have you back on. You're on tour right now. Where are you right now as we speak?
Well, that is the funny thing. Because of my day job, I am back home in Idlewild, California. I am not currently on tour. I was replaced by about, 20 shows in maybe by the wonderful Lur, aka Wrong Man, from Everything is Terrible. Now, Lur has left the tour, and now he is being replaced by our good old buddy Forrest, who is taking the spot of Goddad and lights and sound and video cues. It's a real one-man band backstage.
That's amazing. Yeah, you guys are like the Blue Man Group of found footage. You know?
Right, right.
But what are your impressions then from the tour? How did it go this time around?
It was a really nice time. It was strange to be out for the first time in 2 years. Especially under the situation we're in still. But honestly, it was really special to be back on the road, to be, seeing people I haven't seen in some of them 4, 5, 6 years, even previous EIT editors. Like, it was just this wonderful, kind of fever dream reunion, Yeah. We started off in LA. We drove all the way through the South. I ended up in Nashville by the end. But along the way, folks, I had a very special evening while at the Texas Theater in Dallas.
Yes.
Texas. Now, that is always a very special venue for us. One of our favorites by far. Famously, the theater where Lee Harvey Oswald was found. That's the theater. Anyway, on top of that, so, a really loyal crowd. They've been great to us over the years. We've been going there for, 10, 11 years now. And about an hour before the show, the promoter comes up to us and he's like, hey, I was just wondering if it would be okay if we brought a special guest that's on his way. And we were like, oh, sure. What's up? Yeah. Who? And he was like, his name's Andy Holmes. He's the creator of Gerbert. And we naturally lost our minds pretty much immediately. We didn't believe him for quite a while. Then he explained that he reached out to his family, to his son, I believe, and then blah, 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 blah. One thing led to another, and that Andy was coming. And so, again, one thing led to another. Needless to say, was the highlight of the year by far. I'm still beaming with delight from it. But not only that, Boys Bible Study, that wouldn't be enough. I could not do this episode and talk about Gerbert without the man behind Gerbert himself, Mr. Andy Holmes.
Hey, welcome.
Welcome.
Andy.
Hey, thank y'all. Appreciate it. And it's good to be with you again, Mr. Dimitri, although we're not really right there together, but
Close enough.
In heart.
Yeah, in heart. Exactly.
Where do you live? Where are you phoning in from right now, Andy?
I'm from Abilene, Texas.
Yeah, we're delighted to have Andy Holmes, the it would be right to call you the creator and producer of Gerbert, right?
Yeah, I mean, producer, I guess, depending on if you're, in the show. I wasn't in the producer role. I created Gerbert, wrote the shows, and am Gerbert, and all that. But producer, I guess, would go to Brad and Chris probably, or for most of those shows.
But you're the brains behind it all.
I was a brain. I guess if you're meaning produced the show, like brought it into existence, I guess, yes, that would be the way to say it, I guess.
In the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was Gerbert.
Gerbert.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Yeah, I mean, people who listen to Boys Bible Study, a lot of whom came to us, through our connection with our friends at Everything Is Terrible, will definitely know who Gerbert is. He's a fixture of VHS era Christian kids entertainment. So much to ask. I guess maybe the first thing for me is, what did you have in mind when you were creating the Gerbert character, like physically creating him as a puppet? How did he come to look the way he does?
Well, so the way this all started was way back in the 70s. It was kind of the birth of youth ministries. And I don't know if you guys were part of any of that, but that was a big thing all over. It hadn't existed before, where people were hiring somebody just to work with the youth. Wow. And that became a big deal in the mid 70s. And our particular church, it had a pretty big youth group. So part of what happened in a lot of youth groups as well was, they would have different creative things. You might have a singing group, you might have a puppet team, you might have just all kinds of things. You'd have a name for your youth group. And anyway, one of our deals was a puppet group. And I was just part of a puppet group, and the people that were directing it were very big on everybody has to have a character, a puppet that's theirs, that they create and they uniquely do, as opposed to anybody grab a puppet and do whatever voice with it. So that was really a nice emphasis that a lot of people didn't have, because you could buy a bunch of pre-recorded stuff. So it was nice that you actually had to have a puppet character that was yours. And Gerbert just kind of came out of that. And as far as how he looked, that really evolved. There was actually a puppet character that was made before me that was named Gerbert. It was yellow and had a real big mouth. And it literally, as we were getting ready for a Mother's Day banquet, we were moving the stage area and moving one of those podiums, those stands. And as I moved, it's kind of heavy, and the door opened and all these songbooks fell out. And behind it was this wad of material, and I pulled it out, and it was this old puppet. And somebody said, "Oh, I think that's I think they called that Gerbert or something like that." So I was like, "Oh." So anyway, so I just kind of developed it, and he changed his look. He was originally yellow with a real big mouth and literally little buttons for eyes. And as I drew him, I didn't like that he looked like a hamburger when you drew him like he looked. So I started changing it up and thinking, well, I'll make the eyes a little bigger and I'll make the mouth a little smaller, and I won't, and eventually it evolved to where when I finally got way back years later to doing a national television show with Gerbert, I had drawn him in ways that I didn't know how to make him. And the director, David Price of the show, had directed Sesame Street for a few seasons. So he knew Kermit Love, who was the guy that built all the big birds and Snuffleupagus and different things. And so he introduced us to him, and we basically hired him to make the Gerbert puppet look like what I had drawn, because I didn't know how to do it. And he was working also with a guy named Chuck Fawcett, who I think did a great deal, probably most of the work of building the actual puppet.
Wow.
So the creator of the designer of Big Bird, the designer, according to Wikipedia, Big Bird, Oscar the Grouch, LaChoy Dragon, for those, Jim Henson heads. Again, according to Wikipedia, could be wrong.
Yeah.
Also created Gerbert, also designed Gerbert as far as in physical form.
Yeah. Kermit had a way of talking. He was like, "Hello, toodaloo," and so that's
he would always say, Andy, I realized Gerbert. That was the way he would always say it.
That's so cool. I also want to know, like, from the Everything is Terrible side, Dimitri as a founding member and still tours with the group and makes movies with the group. Scott also a founding member of EIT. Like, I would love it if the two of you described like what gravitated you specifically to Gerbert and the show, because I do find, in the pantheon of the like hundreds to thousands of videos that you've sorted through, there is sort of like an Everything is Terrible like canon of characters, and I feel like Gerbert is one of the most important. I'm just curious to know like how you found Gerbert and like why.
Well, like on the Mount
gravitation.
Everest of Everything is Terrible characters, like Dwayne.
Yes.
Totally.
Right.
Gerbert.
100%. Gerbert is absolutely front and center on our Mount Rushmore for sure. No doubt. It was one of the first tapes that, or at least like in the first pile of tapes when we were, starting to collect, like seriously, when we all lived in Chicago together, when Scott, myself, Nick, Aaron, I mean, who else? Like so many of us were there just going to thrift stores collecting tapes, and Gerbert was in one of those piles.
Yep.
And we just loved it. None of us grew up with Gerbert that I know of, right? I know I didn't.
No, I didn't. Gerbert's something that certainly could have come across my path as a kid. I was watching a lot of other similarly produced Christian media and VHS tapes, but not Gerbert until we were all in Chicago together. And I think one thing that's telling with Gerbert is that so it's made for kids, and for the most part, when you and I, Dimitri, are watching tapes that would eventually be for Everything is Terrible, most other people don't want to watch them. We have a certain patience and tolerance, but Gerbert, like our girlfriends and other friends and auxiliary people would actually sit and watch too.
Yeah, everybody fell in love with him right away.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because the character of Gerbert is so funny and so well done and like relatable and just really wonderful, just wonderfully designed. And the voice is so good too.
Yes. Yeah, with very deep world building. We were just watching an episode, the set design, the humor, the way that even just at the very beginning where Gerbert's getting, Gerbert messes up pretty bad. He spilled water over a painting,
Wow, Miss Deegan, you're an artist.
Well, thank you, Gerbert.
You're
I like
welcome.
this picture too.
Me too.
Oh, Gerbert! You've ruined it.
And just the way he is yelled at feels so kind of realistic. And there's something about yelling at just adorable, sweet, innocent Gerbert that we were hooked, especially with Gerbert for Mayor was a big one that we fell in love with.
I'm Gerbert for mayor, and if you vote for me, everyone will be happy doing what they please. Everyone will be happy doing what they please.
And by the way, we were all in our mid-20s at this point.
Yes, yes.
I just want to make that clear.
That's how, VeggieTales, that was their big success. It was really college kids that were watching. And when it first started, that's really where I wouldn't say that was the case with Gerbert. I think it's neat you guys like him, but
sure. But we didn't know anything about the world. And I think it was one of those tapes. It's safe to say it was one of those tapes where we said, well, there's so much to us that's still unknown. We didn't know that Gerbert was as popular as it was at this point. Because again, we were all just from, around the Cleveland area.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, we just didn't, we didn't know of it. And then we knew that there was a world to uncover in the world of home video, especially VHS, later DVD. But, that was a big sign for us to be like, I don't want to stop doing this. I want to keep finding the Gerberts that are out there. The truth is, Gerbert, but it kind of made us want to keep looking for those white whales, for just something unexpected, something beautiful, crazy, bizarre, whatever it might be. But yeah, Gerbert was one of those first ones for sure.
Well, cool. Pretty wild.
I mean, Gerbert does stand out to me, especially with engaging with your archiving work over the years, Dimitri and Scott, like. A lot of which, speaking of kids entertainment, is collected in your newest movie, Kids Club. But still, I've just through your eyes watched at the very least like small clips of a lot of kids entertainment, especially Christian kids entertainment. And Gerbert stands out. Like there is a caliber of production quality. Like it definitely looks like something that's happening regionally, at the same time, like there's like real set design and props and special effects, and it's like very choreographed and coordinated and not like a bare bones production. It's pretty impressive,
For sure. That's also, well, that's really interesting about talking to you, Andy, is hearing about, oh, well, it was built by Kermit Love. Oh, and then, we were talking about it beforehand. If you want to get into even the set design, there's something so special about all these aspects of it that just makes it stand out. Exactly right. But it just seemed like it was just like a lot of talented people working on this one particular show, correct?
Yeah, and I've always been really impressed. I don't know, a lot of people call it traveling. I mean, it's a neat, good town, but it's amazing how many creative people have come out of Abilene. There's a number of people that are in Hollywood that have done stuff, a lot of good stuff, and recording stuff, and actors. But the set designer was a guy named Nelson Coates, who I grew up with here in going to church together. And in Abilene, Brad and Chris, who basically I signed an agreement with, they both grew up in Abilene. And a number of the people that got involved, Mark McCord, also very, very creative artist, singer, songwriter. He ended up doing the set when Nelson moved on to Hollywood, where Nelson's been for, I guess 25, 30 years. I mean, he's just phenomenally successful. I was telling Dimitri, he's got to be one of the, if not the top, he's got to be in the top 2 or 3. I don't know how many there are that are just like top rung for that position, but for production designer, he's just tons of movies. I mean, just look him up. It's just crazy.
Does a lot for Apple TV, it seems like. Yeah, all this crazy stuff. I mean,
he's like, the morning show. He's a production designer for that. He's done a number of Denzel movies. And he did The Stand with Stephen King years ago, was like his first thing, that big television miniseries.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
So he was hired for that. And I think that was like his first big, that I'm aware of, really big breakout thing beyond, I wouldn't say Gerbert was a big thing, but that it was regular, it was production. It was a good production. But yeah, just big time budgets with since then he's just done phenomenally well.
Man, now I'm imagining Gerbert in The Stand.
Gerbert actually takes place in Derry, Maine.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I didn't know that. Technically, I always said Shelton. Gerbert lived in Shelton Falls. And the reason for that is when the first season came about, second, I think, we'd had our first baby. We named him Shelton because that was my wife's maiden name. Nice. And I thought, Shelton Falls. He just fell right out. And
that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Raised him from there.
That's fantastic.
Where was Gerbert? How was it originally broadcasted? Obviously, and we were talking a little before the recording, but many of the Gerbert episodes, of which there are about 50, if I'm not mistaken, were released on home video. But how were they originally viewed, and how did that come about? Like, how did you go from the idea of the show to like actually, getting it broadcasted?
Yeah. So what happened was the guy I signed with he was really more who would create, a guy who created record deals. As a guy named Chris Christian, he, like Amy Grant, for her first 8 or 10 years, I think. Quite a long time. He had kind of been one of them to so-called discover her, produced her albums.
Oh, wow.
And of course it just took off. But anyway, he was known as a record producer. So he had a good relationship with Word Records. And so they agreed to do X amount of 3 albums with this children's character, Gerbert. So a way to promote the songs, make the cassette sell, was they said, hey, some people are doing this thing with video now. And maybe you guys will give you a little budget to create a video where you can maybe do something to where we'll put like 2 songs from each of the 3 albums. And that way people hear the songs and they'll buy the cassettes. Well, I just decided to write a story with it. And that became the original Gerbert video. That's where Nelson did the sets as well. And he actually was the babysitter of Gerbert. So they were the 2 on camera. but people were starting to really get into video. So they started buying the video instead of the cassettes. And that video got into the hands of Pat Robertson's son, Tim Robertson. And Pat had decided that he was going to run for president. So he's out running. So Tim's running CBN, and CBN's becoming this. It's also becoming the family channel. So early days of cable. And so Tim basically came home. His nanny was showing Gerbert to their kids, and their kids liked it. And so he just decided we're doing Gerbert. I mean, it was Brad and I were sitting in some hotel room when we saw him announce that we're raising $1 million to produce this TV show, Gerbert. And we looked at each other because there was no deal on the table. But we thought, well, I guess that puts us in a pretty good negotiation perspective. Since you've shown clips of this video and said this is the series we're making. So so we shot the first season there at Virginia Beach. It was here's another funny kind of thing. Well, funny to me, I guess. Funny, peculiar. Is the Jim and Tammy Baker scandal, which shortly thereafter, on the heels of it, was the Jimmy Swaggart scandal. Well, that had affected ministries incredibly. So the day we were going in to shoot the show to begin our production, there were probably 300 or 500 people that had been let go at CBN because the donations had dropped so much that all these bigger national ministries were having to let people go. A little bit. That was a stunning bit of history. They were so quiet. Did you hear that? It was crazy.
Yeah, well,
I don't know if that was conviction, sorrow.
Well, it's funny because like I'm really now putting it all into context, and like the time you were making Gerbert is actually a pretty pivotal time with regards to Christian entertainment, which is, what we primarily study on the show. I mean, you were talking about how like it was a direct result of the rise of in youth ministry in the 70s, which of course would turn into like huge media empires once, TV and video, especially when home video became a thing, which I'm assuming the time period you're referring to in your last stories was like the late 80s. Must have been like 80, 87 or something like that.
Yeah. 87, 88.
Yeah. And it's like, not only was that happening, but like, at the same time, there were also these like high profile, like as ministries, like, just like ministers, television ministers and stuff were rising to pop cultural prominence. Then there were also these like high profile scandals that were like sending shockwaves through Christian entertainment too. Like this is a pretty fascinating time in like the history of Christian media.
Well, Andy, you were saying that you visited Heritage USA before everything went down, right? Like
I think it was kind of right after they got ousted. So Jerry Falwell took over that for a little bit. In fact, there's a movie not too long ago that's currently on Netflix or something. We just watched it, Tammy Faye. But anyway, it was Heritage USA. And I remember getting brought in there by, I guess there was a church that met on that premise or that campus, and they brought me in. But it was so strange, because they bought tons of acres, and people would build their like retirement homes there. It's like they were trying to build this, kind of a capitalistic commune, I guess. Where people would come in there with resources. But that tall building they built as a hotel is just hollow inside. They never finished it out, which was so strange. There was a water park there. There was this Main Street shopping thing. It was bizarre. There was a lot of that stuff that struck me as really bizarre, but I was pretty uncomfortable with commercialization of Christianity anyway for myself. I was telling Dimitri, I never intended or wanted Gerbert to be a Christian show in the sense of evangelistic or anything like that. I just wanted to be this kid that was just trying to sort stuff out. To me, it'd been more like my thought and desire would be more like an Andy Griffith or something, Mayberry. That was kind of the vibe I wanted. I never wanted it to be, and now we're going to open our Bibles and, you just are working through things in a way that makes sense. And if people wanted to know something else about it, well, then they could, but it, would be initiated by them. That was my thought.
So Gerbert's Bible blurberts wasn't your idea?
So the blurberts, it was my idea after all this stuff started going. What happened was we started doing shows. I remember when they released the first videos, I had turned in the 6 that I thought, okay, if we're going to do 6, which I thought was many, but if we do 6, here's the titles for them. So like one of them was called The Cat's Meow. One of them was called A Clean Sweep. Well, the record company at that point, they said, it was like an evil word crossover. Like if there was any whisper or hint, like Amy Grant's going to cross over, that's like, oh, it's a sellout. So they kind of swung real back to being extremely, so they made me change all the titles. They said, well, we need a Christian sounding title. So A Clean Sweep became Created for Good Works, because it's about him doing his chores. And I don't remember about Cat's Meow. And that always bugged me. I thought, I don't like that. It feels manipulative and cheesy, and it just doesn't. But it was kind of the way things were, for that.
But it's interesting that, like Ash, when you were saying, the rise of, like it became very mainstream, right? And like, while the scandals were big, especially at that time, it also is a pivotal moment, right? When things went from like local cable access to $1 million, like Andy, you were saying, that all of a sudden this thing that you had been doing turned into $1 million production, almost like without your control. It kind of feels like it's just like, okay, what are we doing? Let's just put this on the market right now. It's home video. So you really got swept up in that era of home video boom, all that stuff, it seems like.
Oh, yeah. And we sold hundreds of videos.
Well, actually, can you talk a little bit about that? Like what?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it goes from, it goes from
unit of number. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no.
I mean, I don't want to make you feel bad, but it's just a way of counting.
Well, no, I'm so curious on how they released this stuff, because just home video was such a massive, massive thing by the late 80s. This is right when like Blockbuster was getting really big, all that kind of stuff. So you kind of get into how it went from, okay, making the show to like the release schedule, how these things how did it take off from there?
Well, a lot of that was just arranged with Word, at the time, Word Publishing, Word Music. And I'm not sure who decided it. I was telling you, I thought it was too much to release 6, particularly all at once, because, video was pretty expensive for most people to do. Now, we had it because, it was cheaper for us because our investor brought in one side, but, we didn't have the cost of the actual studios and stuff like that. CBN, that was what they brought to the table. So most people didn't even have a video. Maybe they had one, but videos at that time, like it'd be cheap. If you bought a 30-minute video for $40, $30, that'd be a cheap one. I don't know if you guys remember, because y'all may be too young to remember, but when like movies available on video originally, they were like $89. That was retail.
Yeah.
For a movie. I think I remember seeing some for $120. So,
Wow.
It was going. You probably saw it a lot faster with DVD. DVD was like, oh, this will last forever, but pretty soon it's like $2 at Walmart in a bin.
Yeah.
And but yeah, videos at the time, they were very, very expensive. I think when we first started selling the Gerbert videos, they were $29.95. And then relatively soon, 6-8 months or whatever, I think they went down to 24 and then 19 or something like that. Now I pay people $24 and they still won't take them. So unless they have an uneven table, you know what I mean? If they need something they can use it for.
Yeah, the main market for that now is literally the people who are on this Zoom call right now.
Yeah. So there's like 5 people that are way into it now, which is very cool. I mean, what a legacy.
Well, and because on the road, we get people all the time who, I mean, you saw it at that show in Dallas where people were saying, oh, I grew up with you. Of course.
Yeah.
I just knew Gerbert from that was just in our house. You were a household name. Like, how did that work? Were the tapes distributed to a lot of, like Christian bookstores? How did that, were they still mainstream enough to go to something like a Blockbuster at the time, or how did that work?
You would sometimes find them in a Blockbuster, not that often. There was understandably a kind of like, what the heck is this? I mean, to make it easier to digest, let's say there's I don't want to pick on any religion, but just to pull out a different, let's say Muslim, or let's just satanic, which I'm in no way comparing those two, but there's a certain belief structure. And if you've heard, this is like a satanic children's show, for all the satanic people, you probably wouldn't broadcast that because people are like, I don't know. That's a very niche market. So I don't know if it was just that. I think there was also an understandable kind of aversion to Christian market entertainment. And so it was tough to get them in a lot of places like that. But a lot of Christian bookstores, they were distributed through different companies. Like I said, at first it was Word. Later, I think we were with Diadem. There were a couple of them. I'd have to really think back. That's going way back. But mostly in Christian bookstores around the world, which would be mostly United States. In some other countries, there was more presence than others. But
it's still a pretty big market, though, right? I mean,
it was a big market.
Yeah.
I mean, but it was much different. Like even a record sale, like in regular general market record sales, I think 500,000 is a gold record and a million's a platinum. But in the Christian market, it would probably have been more akin to jazz. I think it was 100,000, 50,000, 100,000 or something. I may be wrong on that because but that's what I think. It was a little less.
Still very impressive.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's pretty amazing, really. I mean, that whole window of time is pretty amazing. And of course, like a lot of things, there are just fewer places to be able to see things. Like I said, it was a birth of cable. I remember when cable was starting, it was like, why would anybody? It's like Sirius Radio, it's like, why would you pay for something you can get for free? But then again, cable's been huge. Of course, now it's mostly replaced by just, you can get content from everywhere.
Right. Yeah. Well, like that's why for us here at Boys Bible Study, Christian entertainment is such an interesting study. And it's really cool to talk to someone who is a creator of it and was embedded in that, scene and that like commercial scene for some time, because like, it's this really interesting, like the aim of the entertainment is very interesting because it is a market that is very big in, to consider it as a number, but at the same time, it still is very marginalized. And there's like so many people who, as you said, if they say, oh, this is a Christian show, it's like, well, I'm not even going to give that a chance. Like, I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
And also like something you said earlier where you talked about how, for Gerbert, it seemed like a goal of yours was to make something, wholesome and entertaining for kids with a Christian message, but also your goal wasn't to evangelize. And I think that's really neat. And like maybe like why Gerbert has sort of stood the test of time. It doesn't feel like it's pigeonholed into like a particular political identity or denomination of Christianity. But I know that was like a big question, but would you mind speaking on that more? Like what was it like trying to create Christian entertainment when there's these like various cultural, forces at work here?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. A couple of things stick out in my mind. One was when we did get Gerbert on PBS stations, and he was on all the major ones like Chicago, Dallas, Miami, and he was like between Mr. Rogers and Barney, or a bunch of those. So visibility was really good for a number of years. And like even TV Guide, which was a big publication at the time, and I think it was in '94, listed Gerbert as one of the top 10 shows for preschool kids. So, I mean, it got some prominence out there for a short time, but there was a lot of resistance. I remember the local PBS person there in Dallas. We went to some function there. She was pretty resistant to it. And I don't know if you've ever noticed on Gerbert's shirt, it's got a G that just looks like a kid's writing. That's all I did. It was like a kid's writing. But this lady came up to me and she says, I know what you're doing there with the G on his shirt. It's a subtle JC for Jesus Christ. And I was like, wow, that would have been clever if I were that clever to have come up with that. But what a funny thing that somehow some kid's going to be affected. So I think from that side, there was a wariness. And then from the Christian side, all the stats that I heard at the time was of people who were regular, all in, going to church people, maybe 10 to 15% would frequent a Christian bookstore. I mean, it's really not like every Christian was just going, hey, this is awesome. And because it was on TV, I think there was a lot of people who were recording the show, which, it's just fine and great. But for me, from a sales angle, it's like, well, they've got the tapes and they're going to buy them. We probably would have sold more tapes if there weren't home recordings that people were recording them, which I've got no bad feelings about. But I'm just saying it's kind of interesting. You go on one side, it's really neat for the exposure, but on the other side, it's like, well, you're kind of putting it out there for people to watch. Why would they go buy the video of it?
Right.
And I don't think we had a whole lot of video sales, honestly, compared to like VeggieTales, which just blew everything out of the water.
Sure.
I still can't get over the JC. I thought the JCG was on purpose. I think we discovered that at one point, right, Scott? We were like, "Oh, that's so clever."
Yeah,
it's clever. I wish I would have thought of it.
Oh, wow.
No, if you look at like books or anything that I've done where I'm doing like Gerbert's writing, that's just the way I write it. I just thought it looks kind of like a little kid writing. And I'd heard other people say that before she did, and I was like, man, isn't that funny when people just look at something Larry Norman was the Christian singer. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that. I heard of him, but
I've heard of him.
This is early 70s, like one way with the finger pointing up. That was a major deal, like on the cover of Time magazine, like in the early 70s when the Jesus movement was happening. And I remember listening to him talk one time at a show, and he was saying, what's so funny is he said, I was performing one night and I had busted my fingernail, and I think I had broken the little top of my finger, but I couldn't tell. And I kept lifting it up to try to see it, but the bright lights coming in my face were so high, I had to lift it way high before I could see more than just the silhouette of my finger. Somebody took a picture of that, and it became this whole pointing up one way,
That's amazing.
Kind of vibes.
An iconic Christian
iconic
media moment that was
truly.
like a total accident. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, it's illustrative of how people from you could say a mainstream or a secular pop culture are willing to sort of do magical thinking with regards to interpreting Christian stuff. But sometimes there is Christian media, even if it was created with good intentions, that can, on to be honest, like really go off the deep end and do some of that sort of like trying to sort of magically project through like insidious like symbols and stuff. And that's a big part of why we started the show, was talking about stuff like that. But yeah, Gerbert feels just a lot more wholesome than that. Like I really don't get the sense that, its goals are anything other than to, create like quality Christian kids entertainment,
Yeah. I mean, when I was interviewed, during that period of time, I'd always go, I said, really, I'm just trying to help kind of create a conscience in kids. I mean, I don't really, what's right, what's wrong, and why is it right? Why is it wrong? And, what's it mean to do good? And why is it a problem to lie? And if you get too much change at a store, why is that a problem? You didn't steal it. I mean, isn't that just kind of a cool happening thing, and just kind of showing that these things have a ripple effect, and you didn't intend to do it, but now that you know about it, you could, you maybe compromise yourself a little bit when you just go, hey, no big deal. Yeah, this is no big deal. If we keep moving the guidelines a little bit, then where do we end up? You some things you have to kind of, they're kind of good parameters for a reason. However they evolved, they're useful. If you didn't have honesty in the world and that be a high principle, what would the world look like? Integrity, not cheating, not stealing. We all struggle and do all this stuff to some degree, but there's something that restrains us, and I feel like that's real important. And to me, that was what was always on my mind with the shows. And I never, like I said, it's so funny because I would. Lots of churches would have me come there and do things, and I most time didn't really pay attention to which church it was, whether they were Methodist, Baptist, whatever. And so I'd always ask where it was, but it's like for many, you couldn't. you couldn't be strictly enough along their lines to where they were at peace. Like, I don't know, is this an outsider? And I thought, I don't ever want to try to be something other I'm not. And I did feel like that at times. There was one children's camp in particular where the lady really wanted me, and these are little kids, and she really wanted me to go, you make these kids cry about knowing the evil and the pain and the wrongness and the ugliness of sin, and hell. And I was like, whoa. So, and then if you don't go there, they're kind of like, I don't know if he's a Christian or not.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, I can see that.
So that really burned me out on a lot of stuff, because I just didn't feel like you're going to experience love if that's what's going on, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, it's also like a testament to your puppeteering, to your voice work, to like the life you brought to Gerbert, that there's a lot of big concepts there you're talking about. But I think that's another part of it that makes everyone who watch it just kind of get hooked, because like when Gerbert is upset, let's say, it's so upsetting. It's like genuinely like, oh my God, poor Gerbert. Like you truly forget Gerbert's a puppet for most of it. And you're just like, oh man, Gerbert, that kite eater, it ain't coming back. But
it's so funny to see who's interested in not, and particularly now. I mean, nobody even knew what this internet was going to do or be or any of this stuff. And, for me to be here, I'm 60, and all of a sudden I'm going, somebody just posted another Gerbert thing like 6 weeks ago. Why? Why is anybody doing this? I don't even get it.
And
how do they even know? It's craziness. And then, but you never know. I did a fair, Erie State Fair one time, and I got out. This guy was walking me to where my little booth would be for me to set up my little Gerbert show, And I got there, and there's this guy that was like in a biker. He's clearly a biker guy, like cut off sleeves and tats and everything. And he's following me with his girlfriend and the leather halter top, and just the look of a biker guy. And I'm like, okay, they're probably just walking down the same way we're walking. So eventually, it feels like every time we turn, they're turning. And I look back, and the guy sees me, and he goes, "Hey, man, is Gerbert in that bag?" And I'm like, is this like I'm being punked? What is this? No kids, no nothing, This guy's probably, I don't know, 32 or something. And I'm like, yeah, and how did you know? And don't hurt me. But anyway, he said, oh, man. And I'm like, you know about Gerbert? And the girlfriend rolls her eyes. She says, oh, my God. He pours 2 cups of coffee before the show starts, so he doesn't have to get up during the show. Like, are you serious? I go, I'm serious, man.
That's amazing.
So funny. Oh, it's a funny thing. Oh, then another silly story. We were at up in Michigan with this puppet festival, and all these people came to different churches and all that stuff. So after a whole bunch of us that are teachers and speakers at it, we go out to this diner, late at night. There's like 40 of us at a table. Clearly we're there together. It's late, and this waiter's there, and he's like, so are you guys here for a conference or something? What are y'all here for? And they said, oh yeah, it's a puppet conference, puppet convention. And at the time Gerbert was, more known and on the air. And they said, oh, like puppet, you ever heard of Gerbert? He says, you mean like the orange puppet that's on TV? Gerbert. And they said, yeah, Gerbert. And I said, yeah, I've heard of it. So, well, that's him right there. And he goes, nah. And I said, Andy, do Gerbert's voice. So I'm like, hi, I'm Gerbert. And he goes, well, that's close. I love that one.
Every time you do a little bit of Gerbert, I just, my heart skips a beat. It's wonderful.
It makes me so happy.
Well, and then with puppeteering, like, I'm curious, because you said you started, it started. I'm also shocked of the news that Gerbert was pre-named, by the way.
Yeah,
I thought it's like he was destined to become a star. The fact that he already had a name when you found him is something. But beyond that, can you talk about your puppeteering experience? Because again, the puppet work is obviously very well done. Did you have any experience before you started shooting, or did that come just as the years went on? How did that go?
when you shoot it that way, it's really kind of a nice thing because the camera's really close on the puppet. You're not a part of it, so you're really moving to what you're seeing on the camera. So like I'm underneath the stage, I'm looking at a little monitor, and so I'm very much staring into that TV and watching it. But some of the best things that helped me with puppetry came from Kermit, who truly loved puppetry in its purest form. And he introduced us to a really wonderful lady named Nikki Tilrow. Nikki was a professional puppeteer, big time. She was a student of mine, but she worked for Sesame Street, worked on the Muppet thing. She was like the right hand on certain puppets on scenes. And she also was on like Sherry Lewis show years later. And she was actually doing lamb chops as Sherry Lewis got sicker and sicker. And but she was just a phenomenal talent. And I really learned from her a lot and from Kermit about little subtle things of predicting the movement, the fluidity, less is more with your arms. Things like that. And the truth is, you have people that it's kind of like a good book. If you over describe it, the book's not enjoyable. If you give enough that the people's minds are activated, then they think you're a phenomenal writer. And I guess you are, because that's the way and it's that way with puppets. I remember this one lady at a store that I lived nearby, so she knew I was the Gerbert guy. And I'd come over there from time to time, and she said, I need to know, how did y'all make him walk? And I said, what do you mean make him walk? You made him walk. I watched his legs and his feet. He was walking. And I'm like, I'm not aware of any scene like that. So why don't you show me the scene? So she put in a video and she showed me the scene. And you remember that big desk that's right there that he was always behind that looked like a big building block or something. So if you have the camera angle and it's in front of that and you see the door behind it. So if I just did little hop steps and I gradually am going down like perspective is, somebody opens the door and pulls it closed, you don't see Gerbert and you certainly don't see his legs. But until I showed that lady and she's trying to point to his legs, she didn't realize that she didn't see his legs. Right. And that's kind of the secret of it. You know, as long as you don't get in their way, their minds are activated and they think you're a genius. So if you just do enough to give the illusion of life, then people will fill in the rest. It's a powerful secret, really. That's one of the big things when I teach the classes, is that say, just don't get in the way. If you move, make it very little, like shifting, like when we're standing as people, a great thing, if you ever gone to Disney World, their Hall of Presidents, or Disneyland has all of them. And I would always watch, as a lot of people do, watch the ones that aren't talking. They're still alive, and they'll just do quick little movements, subtle little leaning, shifting their weight on one foot to the next, or leaning to a person to say something and then nod real quick. And that's the stuff that you go, oh my God, that's so, are they real? They must be real. I mean, It's that subtlety that really makes the difference. But I appreciate it. And the same thing, predicting the movement and finishing it with your lip synchronization. When you take a breath before you say something, if you were going to yell like, hey man, you'd have to suck in a breath. And I would do that with his body. I would pull it back up just slightly, like he's taking an air, before I'd say, hey. And those two little moves are huge.
Yeah,
that is great advice. That's perfect. Yeah,
seriously.
And I got you need to get that too. There's a great book by Christopher Finch on Disney, and he talked about in animation that fluidity is a big deal. That we all move with sort of a melodic, lyrical kind of way,
right?
Which this sounds tacky, but if you see somebody that's got a bad leg or a bad arm, well, that's one thing we notice, right? They're not moving. And if it's more pronounced, you're going to notice it even more, not because it grosses you out. It's just not what we normally see, and you're trying to process it.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. No, but it's true. Puppetry is extremely powerful. I mean, with everyone, especially with kids, though. I mean, kids will just, even if they can see the puppeteer right in front of them, when a puppet is moving, they will just focus completely on the puppet. It's a pretty magical thing to observe. And I think that's why, obviously, like, puppetry is such a huge part of kids entertainment. Even now that there's more technology for animation and computer animation, I mean, there's just something so personal.
Yeah, and I'm
about.
seeing more puppets pop up every now and then.
Mhm.
You know, it's kind of strange on big commercials. You know, I'm like, wow. And it's not even a very unique looking puppet a lot of times. You know, it's just like, I think they bought this from this puppet company over here.
Yeah.
And it's funny, too, because I never really considered myself a puppet fan. I didn't really care that Gerbert was a puppet. It was just the most portable way to do a show like that through a character. What else would I do? You know, draw pictures constantly to where it looked animated live. You know, this was kind of like a drawing that you could make live so it was kind of like a cartoon brought to life.
Yeah,
Totally.
Man, going back to all the incredibly talented people who have worked on this show, you did mention earlier when we were watching two certain sisters who showed up on Gerbert. Can you talk a little bit about that and how they got involved?
Yeah, Tia and Tamara, right?
Mm-hmm.
They got involved with some little music video inserts. They were part of that. And I met them one day on the set. I remember that, maybe a couple times. I wasn't actually on those shoots because Gerbert wasn't in them. So I may have been writing new ones or something. I came by and watched them at various times. And I remember them being very perky and friendly and real sweet. And but they were in a number of videos that were called Things That Go. So they were short little songs about cars and planes and trains and all that stuff.
Wow. But yeah, you must have grown up with a lot of, I mean, these kids must have grown up with you, I guess, right? Like it was 50 episodes. That's quite a bit for any show, let alone a show with so many kids in it. You know, that must have been in a way like you were like a band leader, a choreographer. I'm sure just so many hats had to be put on just because, you know, you're dealing with young children. Yeah.
But they were so happy just to get out of their cages. You know what I mean? When it was their time to shoot, that we just, I mean, you give them a couple of like Twizzlers. No, I'm joking. No, they were like, whoa, Scoop, we're getting some good stuff. That's why he has the ankle bracelet. But no, and it was, of course, it was a different group of kids the first season and the latter seasons because, like, the first time we shot in Virginia Beach, so they were locals to Virginia Beach. So the Stu and he was the main kid one. There was Miles Stu, Miss Tegan. You know, when I think about it, there wasn't even Mr. Kaiser in the first season because we didn't have the store. So that's when we shot the other part in Dallas at the studios at Las Colinas. And it kind of, because we all lived in Dallas. So it was nicer than living in a hotel for 4 or 5 months. So we got kids from, you know, the Dallas area.
Well, I refuse to forgive Stu for what he did to Gerbert's kite. So
yeah, it's unconscionable.
It really is.
Unconscionable.
The episode we got the chance to watch with Andy was Forgive and Forget, which it has some great Gerbert moments. It features, among other things, we may have referenced it, but the clip where Gerbert accidentally spills water on his friend's painting, and she immediately forgives him. Yet Gerbert does not learn that lesson immediately, and later on, Stu, while doing his paper route, throws a newspaper through Gerbert's window that destroys his new kite. He's been working
well, his
hard
friend
on.
does. He's teaching his friend to throw.
Oh, that's right. Right.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
I
still blame Stu,
but
but
I'm always blamed for stuff. But I didn't
right.
do it.
And he's
well, see, even I did it in retrospect, right? It just happened in front of us, and I'm
so harsh, bro. That is so hard.
You know, I saw it and I still blame Stu.
yeah.
I saw it. Stu would have done it. He wished he would have done it.
Yeah.
But I mean,
He was no angel.
But like the scene when Gerbert is like collapsing on the ground after his kite is destroyed, and he's just like, "Oh no!" Like
heartbreaking.
Yeah. And then the music plays. It's like,
You feel it.
Oh, I can't believe this. My kite is broken. Oh, I can't believe this. Oh, I'm so mad. Oh, my work.
You say collapsing. I have to go back and watch that because I may, of course, I'm underneath the whole set, so I couldn't have really collapsed much. But it might be that I lifted my arm, and as soon as they said roll tape, I kind of sunk down 2-3 inches, so it looked like the end of collapsing. But I don't even know if I did that. But it's interesting because no, but it's kind of cool because certainly that position kind of sold it. That was kind of cool. He was also the first puppet, the main one I've known of, that really does anything showing the legs. And sometimes it's too long and you focus on it. But we tried to make it as natural as possible.
That was really interesting. I didn't even notice that until you just mentioned it. But he is particularly floor-born, I guess, as opposed to most puppets, which are like on a table or a desk.
Yeah, they're like on Sesame Street. Well, it's different. Like, of course, Oscar's just in the trash can, and so that's kind of low. But for like when they shot the Bert and Ernie stuff, they're standing up at standing height, and they just raise the cameras up. So they have a lot more flexibility and mobility because it's hard to move in ways when you're on your knees or something like that,
Right.
And you were also discussing as that evolved, once you got out of, we were also watching it's one of our absolute favorite songs of any tape of all time, Gerbert for Mayor. I cannot tell you. I mean, for example, for our 10th anniversary show, for Everything is Terrible's 10th anniversary show, we rebuilt Gerbert. We had someone build him, which I think is how you first saw.
I saw some
us, and you were like, "Wait, I never sold that version of Gerbert. Who made that?"
You did a good job.
Thank you to the folks who makes. I believe it was Casey Krieg. Shout out who made that, and we did a full cover of Gerbert for Mayor with a podium, with a backdrop. I got to send you photos of it. It was a sight to be seen, but like I just love that song so much. I don't even really know what to say beyond.
Gets stuck in my head.
Yeah, it's been with.
It's canon. It's part of the Everything is Terrible canon. Like, it really has a life of its own now. Well past the run of the show. Did I cut you off, Dimitri? Were you about to say something?
No, I'm just one thing that I remembered that's a bit off topic, but I guess just so the popularity hits. It's like you said, maybe it's a smaller market than 1 million, but 50, 100,000 per tape, whatever, give or take. That's still a lot of people seeing that stuff. So it takes off from there. And then, you're doing tours, it sounds like, you're doing, you're just a presence at this point. Gerbert is to many folks a household name, including there is a photo of you on the internet with George H.W. Bush.
Oh my God, the guy would not
first
stop
lady.
calling. Oh. The worst thing I did was give him my cell phone. That was bad mistake.
One day Gerbert's the mayor, then he has a cabinet position. It's just upwardly mobile for him.
Yeah, he said Supreme Court be good. They need another dummy on there, and I was like, no. That was the first. Yeah, that was actually George Senior though, not George W. But
he said HW.
Oh, did you say?
Correct. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
yeah, George H.W. Yeah, that's right. And he had just lost to Clinton. That was the first thing he did after losing. That was in the backyard of a really nice. I mean, it really went downhill.
Wow. He called you and insisted you comforted him in the Gerbert voice.
That's incredible.
Please have me up there with fabric. That would be awesome. So, no, it was in the backyard it was a fundraiser, backyard of the River Oaks or whatever. I think that's what the area is called in Houston. Really fancy homes. It's pretty wild, though, to see somebody that you've seen more photographs than any other person on the planet, and you're standing right there with him. It's kind of weird.
Right.
I mean, I bet that's how Dimitri felt when he saw Gerbert.
Oh, no doubt.
Genuinely how I felt.
Apples to
Cannot
apples,
stress.
Very good.
I guess, and we talked about it a little bit, but one of my last questions, although we can keep talking, anyone else's too, but something I've been meaning to ask you is, how do you feel about this sort of new life of Gerbert as like a niche internet icon, sort of, to a small, but again, tens, possibly hundreds of thousands of people, definitely know who Gerbert is who may have never even grown up with him, like, honestly, at this point. Some of them did, but some of them just heard about him through the internet, you know?
And this is a bit of a spoiler, but in the new EIT movie, Kids Club, Gerbert is literally a hologram now, too. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
Right. The Gerbert hologram.
For a brief moment, yes.
Yeah, well, how does that was that a surprise? I mean, again, you talked about it a little bit with finding EIT and the Gerbert reconstruction and stuff, but what went through your mind upon seeing that? How do you feel about the Gerbert fandom nowadays?
Oh my God, I think that stuff is brilliant. It's so freaking brilliant and fun. I can't imagine how many hours y'all spend on that thing, but there's an awful lot of that, including Gerbert stuff, that deserves to be mocked. Although, I don't think that stuff was. I think it's just kind of a fun, enjoyment of these things that are they're kind of entertaining in their own light, from some of them from a weirdness. But it's funny looking back on it. But as far as Gerbert being a thing, it's a curiosity. I really don't know. And I don't think it's that much of a thing. I'm not aware of it. But I've not posted anything up there of Gerbert. I think years ago I posted one little clip of a live performance that's gotten 37 views, but I've not posted. So, I'm seeing all these people posting stuff, and it's kind of weird. I don't like the things where people just speak yucky stuff about him, because you're like, what is that? Are you angry at me? I don't even know you,
well, that's the internet for you.
That's just the internet.
Yeah, but there's a lot of that commentary that's like, I think it's something that even we definitely evolved on as far as our messaging. We're like, it sounds snarky what we do or whatever, maybe on the offset, but we hate that. We really don't like being negative about any of that stuff. I mean, every once in a while on some of our movies, it's like, we're pointing out ridiculousness, but we'd much rather kind of rub our faces in it and live there. We'd much rather build a world that people like you helped build, and kind of reconstruct it piece by piece. And after the show, of course, we were a little nervous having you and your wife there. It was very polite, but we were like, I don't know what's going to happen, as far as I can't control your reaction or what the reaction is going to be. But I will say that every time, so no one knew that Andy was here yet in the audience, and we had a pretty big crowd that night. And every time Gerbert would come up on screen, the audience, the first time he comes on, he appears in the film, is in hologram form. The audience just went crazy.
Yeah, I was very surprised. Awesome. And of course, that felt like a nice compliment. They clapped, and I didn't hear others. You're like, they're kind of laughing at different things, like, "Oh, that's stupid" or something.
No, but when Gerbert came up, each and every time he makes an appearance, the audience would just be like, "Yeah, it's Gerbert!" and then at the end of the show, we said we have a very special guest, as Draxum the Dragon said, and the audience just completely lost their shit at that point. I don't think anyone knew what was happening. So that was
a couple sitting in front of us, and they must sweet couple. They must have said it to me 10 times, and they're like, they announced that Gerbert was there, and we're like looking around, and you got it from right behind us. We're like, you were right behind us the whole time.
It's so cute.
I also brought Gerbert. We'll have to.
Like, you were right behind me. And I also went to the restroom. I don't know what all you want to know.
I don't know what I mean. I mean, it was wild enough meeting you and just hearing you talk, and of course, and just hearing you even talk about our movie was so complimentary, but you also understood it so well. I mean, most people who are our generation don't get the movie, so it was very flattering to hear you talk about that. But just in general, the look on everyone's face as they were taking photos with you, and then once I also have to say that you were like. We were like, what's in that bag? We were kind of like that biker guy saying, hey, what's in that perfectly Gerbert-shaped duffel bag? And when you pulled him out, I mean, I could not control the excitement.
I'm glad to hear that, because I thought maybe you just had a lot of Coca-Cola or something. I didn't know for
I was a little terrified of what you'd think of the Gerbert enamel pins, the Gerbert air freshener, the what other Gerbert merchandise did we have?
Random, talk about a random product. Oh my gosh, it's hilariously random.
Well, thank
My
you for being
kids are
so
like,
cool about
Dad,
it.
get me one. Definitely got to get me those. Got to get me those, Dad.
It also smells awful, by the way. I will say.
Does it? Okay, well, I didn't know.
Anyone considering buying it, it is a knockoff Paris Hilton perfume scent, and it is, I don't recommend.
Well, I didn't smell it. I just thought,
Not the artwork.
funny.
The beautiful artwork was done by our buddy Alex Pardee, an incredibly talented artist. But anyway, you were just so cool about it, so gracious, and just understood the entire project, I think, the second you saw it, which was just, that was so cool.
Oh, man, it's just so creative. It's so creative. And it's so cool. And I was telling you about it, and you talked a little bit about, kind of poking fun at commercialism going, and that's kind of what the Jerry's represent. And I'm like, there's a part, and this sort of fits with what I felt about a lot of that stuff, kind of the conflict I lived with a little bit, even when I was doing the Gerbert stuff. I like to do things I believe in, and I didn't like anytime there was a starstruckness, which didn't happen very often, but every now and then it did. I didn't like that. Anybody felt that. And I also didn't feel, I just like for things to be real. And there's a lot of that stuff that should have been made fun of. And that, it sort of just presented, it sort of exposes some of that stuff, which even, and like I said, I'd include Gerbert in some of that stuff. I try not to do any of that, but I mean, it's, I don't know. I'm kind of rambling a little bit on this, but I just think I was so honored. I thought it was so cool. I think you guys are so freaking creative. It's just, and I got little points, or at least it felt like that to me, not points like you were trying to necessarily make them, but that were just inherent in what you're watching that made you just go, wow. I'm a whole lot more didactic with that. I wish I weren't.
We try to overwhelm. We try to wash over the audience with it, and then every time Gerbert pops up, it kind of breaks that spell because it's like, hell yeah, what's up, Gerbert?
Gerbert really does function as a familiar sort of grounding presence in this sea of sometimes really disturbing fast-paced media.
Of course we know it can get quite disturbing at times, for sure, especially as it builds up, but then even then it's like we bring Gerbert back at the end to be like, oh no, it's okay, it's okay.
Gerbert's here, everyone.
Gerbert's here, totally.
Well, some of the fever of it, kind of the pitch of it, sometimes it's kind of like the scene of the original Willy Wonka when they're in the tunnel and he starts going almost mad, does this guy need to get locked up? There was a bit of it that sort of felt like that, but in a good way, just so freaking funny, and this layer upon layer. And no, I'm serious. And it's funny to see different, I know Dennis, who, you have a number of clips of Dennis, and I think you have a clip or two of the Donut Man of Rob, and
do you know the Donut Man?
With Kobe, which I don't. Yeah. I think I met the guy with Kobe, but I can't think of his name right now.
Hearing you before the show, I was like, oh, you good? You need anything or whatever? We pre-show going of music videos, and you were like, I know that guy. Wow. Don't talk to that guy. I got to tell you, I feel like we could. I feel like I have 7 hours worth of questions on just the world. Again, it's such a fascinating world.
Yeah,
that Gerbert came from, of just Christian consumerism, the home video boom, all of it. Just it was such a wild combination of things where it's just such an interesting time in history, like you were saying, Ash.
It really is. It really is. I mean, you don't notice. I guess I noticed it more watching your thing. To get a different generation removed, kind of making commentary back on it. And
right.
I just think that's fascinating. I mean, I think it's fascinating. Kids like to have phonographs, like to have record players.
Right.
Totally.
I mean, I just think it's interesting, and they really love it.
And even just some of the stuff we do find over time, I will say, and I'm sure, all the boys Bible study folks here, you get this, I'm sure, more than anybody, where you can tell when a tape is made or a movie's made. They talk about this a lot in modern Christian films. I know you all talk about this, where the filmmakers don't even see themselves as filmmakers. They see themselves as preachers that just happen to be, their medium is movies, right? And that's why sometimes production value can be a little, leave a lot to be desired, all that sort of thing. But
Right.
I think again, and even with a lot of puppet stuff, with kid stuff, you can almost feel disdain in some of the makers, but not with your work. And I just think that really shows in what you were saying about how it wasn't even meant to necessarily be Christian from the get-go is so fascinating, because I would have never thought that.
You know, and I kind of always thought, we touched on this too a little bit earlier when we were talking to Dimitri, but I always thought of Gerbert as sort of like if Mr. Rogers could be a kid. You know, I was in my brain, I was thinking, I kind of like the tenderness about this is important to figure out. This is important. It's okay to have these feelings. And it's I thought there'd be kind of an interesting with that kind of vibe. So, and then looking back, some of it's embarrassing because I think, I am Gerbert, all that stuff to work out. Like there was one that was about Gerbert. The three friends were going to make a newspaper together. And then the two friends started having a disagreement, and then they each tried to recruit him for their paper.
Oh, right.
And the tension that he felt. And that was an emotional one for me because I thought about, to me, it was a way of addressing divorce and how kids feel pulled between the two. They don't want.
Oh, wow.
And that's what he was saying. He finally broke down, and I know it probably sounds like his heart's on his sleeve, but in his brain, he's like, I don't want to be I don't want to be your cartoonist. I don't want to be your cartoonist. I want to be y'all's cartoonist. And we're all doing this together.
Oh, poor Gerbert.
Wow. The irony is both those newspapers are owned by Sinclair Media now.
Yeah, exactly.
It didn't matter.
Crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Freaking stupid Sinclair crap.
Not to put you on the spot, but being that this is an audio format, I was wondering if you would please indulge us and do a little greeting for Boys Bible Study listeners. As Gerbert, would you mind saying a little something?
No, I don't mind. A little something. No, hi, this is Gerbert. You're listening to the Boys Bible Study podcast.
Yes,
chills up my spine. That just really
amazing.
Hey, don't touch that dial. You're listening to the Boys Bible Study podcast. Wait, there are no dials.
Oh my god,
I love it. So great.
Wow. Thank you.
Seriously, thank you. Any other questions from the panel for Andy before we go into our final thoughts?
Just thank you for talking to us for so long.
Oh,
sorry to go on. I know you're on Central Time, so it's so cool of you to keep up with us. But just thank you. I for everything, for all the hundreds of hours of entertainment you've given us.
Oh, dude, it's so neat. I mean, you ask how I feel about all this. I mean, and this is the first of these things to happen. Maybe the only thing to happen, but I think it's awesome. I mean, I just to be remembered at all is we're talking 30, 40 years later. That's a pretty neat thing. If anybody gets it. And that was cool too, Dimitri. A lot of those people that came up afterwards, they're like, oh my God, dude, I watched this as a kid. And you could tell they genuinely were like, this kind of completed something for them,
Right.
Which is very, very cool.
Which is why I don't think it's a coincidence that these two words sound really good together. Gerbert reboot. I'm just saying. I'm hopefully going to investigate this more, but I'm hoping for a better future. That's all I can say.
That'd be awesome. I've already got the poster. You got Gerbert, a picture from behind, just the back of his shirt, and it says Gerbert's back.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, come on, people.
Come on. Who would want his back? I got Gerbert's back.
And honestly, I gotta also say, Gerbert sounds exactly the way he did in those tapes. So kudos to you on just keeping him going.
Yeah.
Keeping them alive.
I have to I suck in helium about 2 pints per day. It's great.
The lengths that artists go to push their bodies to the limit. You know,
yeah, it's just a commitment to my craft. I don't want to make a big deal of it, but I do have a YouTube channel that breaks it down. Subscription based, of course.
I mean, that's what we do over here. Serious question though, is there a place where, like, do you have any plugs? Do you have any projects ongoing or stuff that people could follow you on? It's all right if you don't, but people are often curious.
Plugs, but there were only like 3 of them, and it just looked like weird hair sticking up, and so I got rid of them. But now I've had a chromodomia for quite a while.
Okay.
Yeah, and to have a cubolectomy. No, those are old Seinfeld jokes about bald guys.
Okay.
I take no credit. No, I don't really, but I think it's very cool. Like I said, Dimitri and I were talking today, and yeah, so that way I'd say we do have something. We're just playing around, and it's really nice that to have a creative and fresh kind of creative thing. And I got to say, it's very it's quite stimulating and very, very fun too. Because honestly, I wouldn't want to come up with anything myself, because I'd go, I can bring something, but there also needs to be a whole different pulse to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's a different world.
I just want to know how Gerbert would feel about, I mean, let's be honest, he would have to deal with Q at some point. I'm just saying. And he would be torn for a little bit. QAnon. I'm saying he would be would at
JFK
least be pulled.
Jr.
I'm not saying it would be a life lesson for him to learn about what to trust and what not to trust on the internet, is all I'm saying. And he would
Jr., bro.
I can imagine a whole,
Gerbert would play Fortnite. He would go on TikTok. Gerbert would go on TikTok.
Gerbert would definitely be, of course, for sure, totally. And there'd be a lot of temptations and bullying, a lot of things that he would have to deal with in a 2022 era. And that's just a tip of the iceberg. I'm just saying.
Gerbert's gonna dab.
Gerbert's what?
Floss. Gerbert's gonna do the floss dance.
Yes, exactly. I want to see Gerbert do the floss and the carton dance. I want to see Gerbert dab. Anyway. Yeah.
See, now I'm totally 60 because I don't know what the heck you guys are doing.
I don't even think we know what half of these are.
Yeah, but dabba-doo. I'm trying to find a context for what y'all just said. No idea.
Also, Dimitri, would you mind mentioning like the new EIT movie and anything people should know about the current Everything is Terrible era?
Yeah, anybody who is, this airs on Sunday?
Yeah, it'll be coming out on Sunday.
Yeah, there's probably about 8 or 9 days of our tour left, I believe, including Seattle and Portland should be happening around then by the time anyone's hearing this. So there's still one leg of the tour left. There's Kids Club available on DVD right now at everythingisterrible.com. Then we got, I think we're going to put up VOD pretty soon. We got a Patreon that we're going to start pretty soon.
Ooh.
We got Meow Wolf. Everyone should go there to check out Pizza Pals Play Zone, our own permanent exhibition that is like living inside an EIT universe. And a bunch of other cool stuff hopefully down the road. But yeah, for now, that's about it.
Andy, thank you so much for spending the time talking to us this evening. This is a very, very special episode of Boys Bible Study for us.
Well, I loved it. Thank y'all so much, and hopefully I didn't overtalk. I've been in a hole for so long. Now somebody wants to talk to me. I can't stop.
That's exactly why we're here. That's exactly why we do the shows. Is we love meeting the people who are involved in this and talking to them and learning a lot. And you provided a really major insight into this era of Christian media, which is exactly what we study. So we're very grateful. Cool. We're very grateful.
Well, yeah, man. Love to do it anytime, man. It's awesome.
Before we go, I'm just going to do our Boys Bible Study plugs for the recording. Thank you so much, everyone who's listening. If this is your first time here, please go to boysbiblestudy.com. That's where you can find links to subscribe to our show on any place podcasts are available. Also, if you really like what we do and want to support, check out patreon.com/Boys Bible Study. For $5 a month, you get access to our bonus episodes. You'll get a new episode every Sunday instead of just every other week. Also, special thank you to our patrons at the $20 tier. Our patron saints, we want to shout out Nicole, Marissa, Jeff, Jane, Kara, and Alexandria. We really appreciate your generous support. Our outro song is Oh My God by Mary. From all of us here at Boys Bible Study, myself, Ash, my co-hosts, Scott and Julian, our guests today, Dimitri Simakis of Everything is Terrible, and Andy Holmes, creator of Gerbert. We would like to say, peace be with you.
And also with you.
Yes! Yes!
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I feel your love in me, it's coming from within. Oh my God, my devotion is so unwavering. Divine emotions when you enter me.